I have a question left on a YouTube comment. And I think it's a great question. It inspires me to go a little bit deeper in the context around this work. And I think you'll know why when I read the question. My problem is I'm even avoidant of this work, meaning it does not just to kill or be inquiries. I think the person means the kind of work that one does to on the spiritual path. This the work, I think is what the person means, but maybe they mean just this. I become phobic of it, in fact. My life becomes hell doing inquiry and recovery work, and then I have to look into that. And if my life isn't hell, I need to go looking for it to inquire into it. I love to sit down and play guitar or sing a song and call a friend, but I'm way too depressed by this work and by apparently needing to do it. And instead of any enjoyment, I either feel like, can I just say right now, it is not the work. Sorry, I don't usually do that, but it is not the work. It is your belief system, your program around the work and around yourself in healing. And the reason I want to say that is because I couldn't wait a second longer to let you know that I really encourage you to work with just a facilitator. It doesn't have to be me. One of my facilitators for like 2 sessions, I'm begging to give me at least two. If it were smarter and more mature, it would be like five. Maybe you were already working with a facilitator. I don't know, but I, the thing is this goes against everything that is my experience. The way that what you're saying goes against everything. So I don't know how. I don't know. I'm going to try to help you. But what I can see here is that your mind has really spun a web here. And I know that you think that that's what's going on. I know that you think that. Listen to me and look at my eyes here because I'm trying to get through to you, whoever wrote this. I want to reach you. I know that you think it's the work that's creating hell for you, but there is another thing going on. There is something else that's like a shadow or an unconscious thing here that I don't think you're going to be able to see this because I think your mind has convinced you that the work, in other words, the healing, is the problem. Now, that's a great spin of the ego. I mean, it's like I almost want to say, like, nothing offensive. It's just like, congratulations, ego, universal ego. You have truly, truly, you have truly, truly become so clever, fascinatingly clever, that an ego can do that. And listen, I'm not, I'm not calling you out as much as calling it out. Okay, so don't take this personally for sure. Don't, because it won't help you to take this personally. Just listen to me for a second. Egos, listen, the kinds of things that I've heard an ego say to me is I've seen egos in enormous physical pain, absolutely suffering over what's going on in the world and refusing to do inquiry, even when previously, when they've done inquiry, all of that cleared away. Now, hear me again. I have sat with people for whom inquiry has given them major breakthroughs out of their conditioning, leaving their stories, leaving their traumas, feeling reduction of pain, sometimes even almost an elimination of pain. And in the next session, true story, the ego will have already spun a story by the next session that this work doesn't work. That's what we're up against here. We were at the Killaby Center one time, Dan McClintock and I, and I'm going to get to your question in a second, but this just inspires me to talk more broadly about this whole thing. We were at the Killaby Center. There was a client there. Dan's a co-developer, but he was an employee at that time. He was a staff member of mine. We were in a room with someone, and we were literally facilitating the person, and their story was something along the lines of there's nothing that's going to improve them. They're always going to be unhealthy, and nothing will work. Nothing. So that was the story. We literally started doing the Kilby inquiries with the person, and he was losing the story. Like he literally was having difficulty remembering his suffering thoughts, and he was just looking at us kind of dumbfounded. And then, even as we watched that happening, his ego, it's like it remembered one of its stories and it said, "No, this isn't working." You see, but that's the ego's last stand, isn't it? In the face of direct experience where the ego gets deconstructed, made to seem to be toast, of course it's going to do this. Of course, because the ego, what we call the ego, is just a pattern of thinking and feeling and sensing, which is all about survival. So much of the ego suffering is because it's psychologically trying to survive. It isn't even about physical survival. It survives in any way it can by spinning and holding on to whatever story makes up its identity. So if the story is, I'm never going to get better, perfect, absolutely perfect. That works. That absolutely works. For the ego, it doesn't matter. So what you have here is a story that your ego is very cleverly hung on to, which is the recovery, that the work, that the healing is the problem. So if we went into inquiry with you, what would happen is that would be deconstructed. If you, as long as you were open, that would be deconstructed with you, um, to the place where you couldn't hold on to that anymore. Like if you would let us work with you, that seems like something that we could easily work through, frankly, if you would give us the time. But what I want to say first is, are you even open to that? Because you see, you got a belief system that sabotages. First of all, please know it's a belief system. Don't mistake this for reality. Don't think that in reality, recovery or healing work is the problem. That's not real. The problem is our suffering, the human suffering, the traumas, the stuff that's being healed, that's worked on. That's actually the issue for people. But you see how in order to sabotage, if you could understand the nature of this ego pattern, to see what is it doing here on earth, like really look at it, what it's doing. See, it's a time-bound story, past to future, and it really only wants to survive. That's really all that it wants to do, and to be somebody, and that just means to survive. Literally, it's just so simple what it wants. And of course, we talk about physical survival, like I have to have food and water and shelter to physically survive. I'm not talking about that at all. Nothing to do with that. What I'm saying is that it has to survive as a conceptual separate self, energetic too, not just conceptual, but the inner, the body. So it has to survive. It believes, the mechanism believes that it has to believe an individual separate identity to survive. Now, this survival has probably served us well in many ways, right? But now it's creating a lot of suffering. Look at what it does when it gets into a story like this. It's doing the same thing. Again, whatever content the ego can go for, it will. It doesn't matter the content. I've seen people, their whole ego story is like that they're disgusting. And I was doing a session one time. I just want to show you the sabotage here so you can really, I want to like just like shake you out of this and go, oh my God, what he just said. I need to go look at this because it's, I'm going to try to make it obvious. It doesn't matter what the content is. It just wants to survive. And by surviving, it sabotages. Now listen to this. So the ego already wants to fail, be seen as separate, be deficient, not good enough, hell on earth, basically. That's its nature. So it wants more of that. That's what it wants. Now, you don't want more of that, whatever you are, but the mechanism needs more of an interpretation of reality that confirms that it's separate and deficient. It needs that. This is survival, at least to the mechanism. Survival, guys. So when it picks up a story, if it starts to interpret reality in a certain way and creates a belief or a program that the healing or that the recovery or that the awakening is the problem, It's doing the same thing. It already believes this self-sabotaging story, this deficiency story, so it interprets reality as confirming it. You hear me? The deficiency story has to interpret things as confirming that it's true because it has to survive. Now, I say that forcefully so that you'll hear me here. That's about as forceful as Scott Gillespie gets. My my husband always says, "Oh, you still sound like a woman even when you're forceful." I don't know what he means by that. I have a soft voice. But anyway, understanding understanding this is a universal mechanism, so nobody gets to be special. Like literally everybody's doing it. So the deficiency story, a core aspect of ego, wants to confirm itself in order to survive psychologically as a separate deficient self. So whatever content it grabs on, it doesn't matter. Just need some content. And then once I have the content, this here's the content is I'm your story is recovery healing work is destroying me or it's the issue. So there's its content. It's literally going to look out into the world and find proof because it wants to survive. And if you don't see that, that's a huge miss. Sorry, guys. It's a huge miss. So there's that. So you already knowing that the ego is a self-sabotaging mechanism because it has to survive. And if its content is that life is shitty or that healing doesn't work or that it's hell on earth, that's fine. So it'll continue to do that. Now, there's where the issue is. You have to understand that the mind that created this problem, as Einstein said, cannot find the solution. The mind that created this problem, hear me, cannot find the solution. Einstein, brilliant. Thank you. Because in direct experience, exactly what I find. If this story, this person, the person that I'm answering the question to, whose ego is made up of this content, begins to then try to think himself out of that, he will in fact actually just confirm it because he's going back to the same mind, which is deficiency story based and self sabotaging. So, all of your, I hate to tell you this, but all of these concepts that you've poured onto modalities and awakening, all of that is nothing more than your story. Now, you may already know that, but I needed to talk about that first in that way so that you don't get confused on the front end. Don't get confused on the front end, meaning before you go deep into work, don't get confused intellectually about what's going on. There's a part of you that is, there's a part of all of us that is intelligent, that insightful, wise, that can see and hear what I'm saying and can go, mm-hmm, yes, that's exactly how my identity works. I've always believed this about myself, and I continue to believe that, and there's a self-sabotaging thing going on. So if everybody can just be totally honest, we all have that until we don't. Now, I'm really trying to help you, but I want to talk very directly here. If this is what I would call a surface story. So I don't know if you ever heard in 12 step, they talk about contempt prior to investigation. So that just means before I even truly investigate, truly, and I mean truly means skillfully, like deconstructing inquiry, powerful, effective, penetrative, deconstructive inquiry. Before I try that, I already have contempt for the method. Or even as I try that, I have contempt, and the contempt keeps me from going deep. So it's another ego strategy. It's like I'm going to sit here outside of something, or I'm going to dabble in it somewhat and then decide that it's not for me. The thing is, if this methodology is not for you, then find another one. That's just clear to me that it cannot be about this work, Killer Bee Inquiries. You've got to go find what works. But if it is this work that you're interested in, if you were in a session, The facilitator would take your ego to task in a gentle way, but a very deep way, everything that you believe. So, reverse inquiry, deep somatic work, mining, utility inquiry, unfindable inquiry, they would literally hear what you're saying and then show you how it's not real. Now, but this is a surface story. So, meaning that I could be wrong about this, but my sense is that you haven't done like a set of sessions with a facilitator because if you had, I would be very surprised that you're sharing about it this way. So, first of all, have you had sessions with a facilitator? If not, please do. Because it's so difficult to work with someone over a comment and to guide them into what to look at here. But when you have a facilitator there, it's like, here we go, game on. Um, so do that. And this surface story is what we encounter in a number of ways, and you all might want to look for what your surface story is. Your surface story is the ego's clever way of disqualifying itself and not truly going deep. So it's like if you're standing on the edge of a pool and you know that the answer is simply to dive in and begin swimming. These surface stories are the things that keep you from diving in, or maybe you just put a foot in, or you go in up to your waist. See? So these are the stories on the front end that keep us from diving in and going in. And what I say to people is if you haven't dealt with the surface story, how can you truly go deep? You haven't even really dove in. And people will say, well, I have dove in. But what I'm saying is, what I mean by that is learn the skills and use them skillfully, not rest as awareness or meditate every day. Or what I'm saying is that these skills, learn them and use them, or go with a facilitator who will not, will go deep with you, will not hold anything back, will be very direct. The surface stories stop us either from starting or from going deeper, and especially from deconstructing the surface story. So one of the great things about the surface story, like if a surface story is like, I'm not going to do it right, or I can't do it right, like a perfectionist says around inquiry or something, I can't do it, or I'm not doing it right. That's a story that's been with them most likely for their whole lives. And so it keeps them from getting started and going deep. So here it is operating in this. Or maybe a surface story is, I don't trust myself. So Scott and these folks have great inquiry methods, but I don't trust myself because maybe some trauma happened where you can't trust someone like me who's an authority or a caregiver, or and and you can't trust me or you can't trust yourself. Lack of self-trust stops people, and they often don't know that they don't trust their own experience. So when they start doing inquiry, it's a stopper. It stops them on the surface. Other ones are like just like the fear of death. So the fear of death just lingers in our consciousness, and we may not even know the extent to which it's a surface story, meaning there may be sort of an across the board kind of refusal to go deep because of the story that I'm afraid of death, but then may not even know that. So maybe operating on an unconscious level, keeping you from going deep, surface story. Anything that stops you from going deep is a surface story. And this is a surface story, that the work is the problem. So that's one of the most, I don't mean this derogatory way, I just have to speak freely. That's one of the most clever things I've ever seen the ego do. It's almost perfect. It's like the perfect surface story because it has already decided that it's not going to work. And so the thing is even as you begin to do the work a little bit, remember that your mind is going to want to confirm it. So, like doing the work now probably becomes the way that you confirm that it doesn't work because you're taking that surface story into it with you instead of deconstructing it on the front end. deconstruct this on the front end because you can't dive into the pool if you're taking it with you into other inquiries that you need to do. So before I would do any other inquiry, if I were you, I would sit and I would just do reverse inquiry and utility on some of these. So if you're not going to work with somebody, this is what I would do, and be really, really self-honest during this process, because knowing that you have a story that already has decided that this is hell, you have to be very careful here to be honest during the process, because your mind's going to want to confirm that it's not going to work or that it's hell. That's what you're inquiring into. So that story could easily just take you over, just literally pull you into it at any point in time if you're not honest with yourself about what's coming out, not honest with yourself about what you believe, like what you actually believe, honest with yourself about what you're feeling in your body and what it means, what's connected to it, honest completely, radically honest in the process. Otherwise, this is probably not going to get seen through. So, honest and earnest. So, what I would do is, let's see. Okay, here we go. One of the beliefs you have is when there's endless tension and striving for healing. So you said there's a belief you have that in your life it's just like an endless tension and striving for healing. Let me say this. Not, it is not that. And I'll show you why I say that. When you're identified with ego, remember we're talking, this is all ego here. Everything that you're saying, all completely ego. That ego, that ego is designed, again, not just to confirm its identity and sabotage, but it's designed to keep going. It wants to exist in time. That's its thing. Its survival is about surviving as this entity, past, future entity, right? So when you wake up from that, when you have the non-dual realization or you shift into recognizing your true nature, none of that is relevant that you just said. As awareness right here, there's no sense that there's a bunch of healing that has to happen. Whenever I shifted into awareness in 2007, the ego story of trying to get somewhere, dead, gone. The seeker was it seemed to be an illusion. From that point forward, there was no sense of that I'm on any sort of trajectory of ego of getting better. It's not in my consciousness. So the ego sees this kind of work very different than it is from awareness. Very different. And a lot of the antics that the ego puts up is just a way of not abiding as that. It's like, no. See, from awareness, it's just, is there something arising now? Oh, okay. See that, feel that. In awareness, this is just about being with experience. That's all that it is. It's literally being awake to experience. So, and then inquiry can help with that if I'm not awake in any moment to something. So, at this stage where you recognize awareness, this is just like living. That's all this is. But there's an additional component to it in that you're awake to your interior experience. You're awake to awareness. But we're not going anywhere. So there's no sense, since 2007, there's no sense that I got to do this work to get somewhere. That may sound strange because I've already shared about how there was chronic pain healed, addictions fell away, all this stuff happened, traumas got released. It's like, how could you do all that work, Scott, if in your consciousness you're not trying to get anywhere? That's how I did the work, by not trying to get anywhere. It's not me, it's awareness. Awareness, not trying to get anywhere, it's just aware. It's the mind that comes in. So, first of all, trying to, the ego here has got you. It has you. Um, So know that I'm trying to be very clear here so that, yes, so that there's no mistake here. First and foremost, beyond the sabotaging thing that I talked about, you have to understand that the ego consciousness will interpret this work as I'm trying to get somewhere. See, and that it's on, so on that's the thing that weighs us down. It's like the sense of like I'm going to be doing this forever. This is like the burden in my life. All that is just pure ego because from awareness, it's nothing like that. Nothing. I can't even relate to it, actually. Can't find it, what you're talking about. So, what I would do is I'd get really busy if I were you, taking a look at who you think you are. Really deep look at this. From the ego standpoint, it's always thought of as like I'm a person who's going to heal. Like, and then I'm just keep, and then from that, it all is just heavy and difficult because it's like from the ego, it's like the ego doesn't see an end inside, doesn't want that healing. Can we be honest? The ego doesn't want this. It doesn't want the healing. It doesn't want the awakening. It wants to survive. So that's why if I were you, I'd be doing deconstructive work on the seeker identity, the healer, the whatever it is that thinks it's living in time, deconstruct that before you really go there after you deal with the surface story of this work is hell or whatever. After you deal with that surface story, go straight to and don't go anywhere else. Go straight to questions about your identity. Because if you don't, I feel like your ego is just going to kind of pick up on this story over and over again. Maybe you haven't sat with somebody for a long enough period to let them guide you through this. So now, listening to me, now that you know that the ego sabotages by nature, doesn't matter what its content is, it'll just keep sabotaging and telling the same story over and over again. That's a surface story that'll block you. Then when you go in, the kind of work that you're doing is so important. So if you already have this story that I've got all this work to do and I don't want to do, and it's depressing and it's hell or whatever else, um, I would try some reverse inquiry on that. So, for example, if you're ready to do this process, preferably with someone, see, there's part of you, there's a lot of beliefs in here that I'm looking at that are literally not reality. They're just beliefs that you've picked up and now you're suffering over it. So let me just find one and show you. So I don't know what your central belief is here, but if you can boil that down. Oh, well, here's one when I said like that this is endless tension and striving for healing. There you go. There's the ego right there. It loves those kind of things. This is going to go on forever. It secretly loves this. That's what I'm saying. I don't mean that you consciously love this. I'm saying that this is exactly what the ego does. This is its business right here. It's good at this, of thinking of things like that. Endless tension and striving for healing. Perfect. Perfect. Because then that'll keep me from doing it if I think that way. Start with the reverse inquiry. This is not endless tension and striving for healing. I don't have to be endless in tension and striving for healing. Yes, I do. Now witness literally every single thought that arises to object to that. See every thought one thought at a time. Let each thought fall away. When the inquiry goes quiet, repeat it again. If I were you, I would not jump off that inquiry for quite a while. I would be staying on that one. In other words, this work is not endless tension and endless healing. Reverse inquiry. Yes, it is. Keep looking as long as you get a yes, because these thoughts that are coming up are not reality. They are a program in consciousness, a program. If you don't see the program, you'll continue to believe it and operate from it. Stay in inquiry on this. So, this work is not endless tension, endless healing. Yes, it is. See all the words, no matter what they are. If you step out of that inquiry and try to go into inquiry on other things, I don't think it's a good idea. Quite honestly, because it's still a surface story. Don't budge off of that. All of your work right now is just on this story about how this is endless and never ends or it's hell or whatever. Reverse those beliefs, like whatever they are. When does the goddamn quest end? You ask me. I love that. When does this goddamn quest end? Reverse inquiry. There is no quest. See, because the quest is all ego. It's not, it's not in reality. There's no quest here. None. All there is awareness and some things arising and falling. That's all that's going on. That's it. The quest is one of the ideas that's arising and falling. Just like the spiritual search is an idea arising and falling to the awakeness. So go into inquiry. There is no goddamn quest. Yes, there is. And then here come the thoughts. Watch every single one of them. Repeat. Don't jump off this inquiry until it's empty, until it's like when you say, there is no goddamn quest. Right. There isn't. That was a story. Don't jump off that inquiry until you get to that place with complete clarity on that. Don't forget utility inquiry on these. So, going back to the belief that this is endless tension and striving, what do I get out of believing this is endless tension and striving? I must be getting something out of it because I keep believing it. Ego gets something out of it. What is that? Maybe this is how I continue to suffer. This is how I sabotage if you're that insightful, but that's largely unconscious. But see what comes up. From what I can tell, it's like one of the utilities that may not show up for you, but it's obvious to me is I believe this is endless tension and striving. That gives me something. What does that give me? It gives me myself. Like I get to stay me, the self, the ego. I get to stay here by believing that. I get to be, I get to survive. But there may be other ones like this is how I get this or how I get that. My point is add utility inquiry in there. So in addition to saying there is no goddamn quest, add in there, what do I get out of believing there's a goddamn quest? I got to be getting something out of that because the program keeps appearing. If I wasn't getting anything out of it, like if it was a thought like I'm a butcher, like I cut meat for a living, I don't get anything out of that. I don't get love, I don't get approval, I don't get safety, I don't get survival because it's not what I do for a living. I don't get anything. So that thought's not going to reappear, that program. But if I'm getting something out of the idea, this is a goddamn quest, then the goddamn quest program will continue. See that? So utility is important to see. This, what you're explaining to me, is nothing other than a deficiency story. What you're explaining, it has all the hallmarks of that. Listen to this some of these statements to hear how this is coming from a seeming entity that lives in time and that wants to survive. Just hear it from that. So he's saying that if he has a nervous breakdown or some issue, then he or she interprets that that is wrong because I should have approached it with more skill. You see, that's deficiency story. I'm wrong. I'm not enough. I'm not doing it right. I should have approached it with more skill. This is deficiency story. So what that tells me is by no fault of your own, you haven't been in the company of someone, facilitator or teacher, who can skillfully help you with that. Because this is like deficiency story 101. So I'm saying put yourself in the lion's mouth to see if you could be helped by that. Like put yourself in the company of someone who can see what's going on and they can help you through this. But another little way of going into this and remembering that this is pure ego. Again, that's not a derogatory statement. I'm trying to point out to you that you're speaking about this work from this sense that you're a time-bound story. That's all I'm saying. And in that, there's a deficiency story. So if you look at the work, recovery, healing, awakening, that thing that your mind conceives, what is that mirroring back? What deficiency story does it bring up? I don't know what your mind would say there, but I can imagine that it might say something like, you know, I'm fucked. I mean, that might not be the words, but like that's the story here. Like, I don't want to do the healing. The healing is hell. The work is hell. When I try to do it, it gets worse. So I mean, like whatever that story is, then you are what? Name it. Might not be I'm fucked, but something like give a name to that of what you actually believe about yourself, that the work is mirroring back, and then reverse it. I'm not fucked. Yes, I am, because this is endless striving. Because they say I just need more skill. Whatever it is, see the story coming up now. Observe it. Don't go back into mine. Just witness. If you go back into mine, you're reinforcing it. It's the Einstein principle. Witness as it comes up. Do utility inquiry also. The other thing is I'll just share this, is we get really confused, don't we? When we're making this shift from the ego to the awareness, we get confused about what our true nature is. So, because all these programs are running and that gets mixed into it. So when people talk about true nature, it's like, I don't know what that is. I really maybe get glimpses of awareness, but mainly I believe I'm the story right here. So when thoughts come up, no matter what they are, can you start to discern your true nature? So let's say a thought comes up that says, healing or awakening is endless. What you're actually looking for on the path is your true nature. That's you're looking for yourself, but you're mistaking it in all these things. So if that thought comes up, awakening is endless. Just ask this, are those words the awareness that's looking? Are the words themselves the awareness that's looking? Because it sounds like you're really getting confused there and you're not seeing that these words are still ego. You're thinking that they're reality. I'm helping you recognize your true nature more directly now. So whatever comes up about healing or awakening or whatever, just ask yourself, are those words or is that picture the awareness that's already here, that's looking? And usually that'll help you just to see, no, the thought awakening and healing is endless. Is there are words, that's not the awareness that's looking. This is the awareness that's looking. Rest as that. And now treat these words for what they really are. Not true or reality. They're words appearing to you, but you're the awareness. Sit in that, and then just let yourself conjure up this story about how awakening is the problem. Awakening is hell, or this work is hell, whatever it is. But what are you doing in this work, really? We're not trying to bolster and coddle and build up an ego. We're trying to see what is our true nature here. So as those words come up, awakening is hell, or are those words the awareness that's looking? No, this is the awareness that's looking. So then stand as what you are and be radical with this at this point. Because I think if you don't get into radical inquiry here, and I mean deconstructive inquiry, full on deconstruction here, you're going to continue to tell this story. So if I were you, I'd be sitting literally, I'd be sitting at home and like get this story going. Like tell yourself this. I feel like I spend my life advancing on a battlefield in World War I. words. See those. But what are we doing here? We're actually recognizing what we are. That's what we're doing. We're not trying to heal an ego. I'm not doing that. We're recognizing what we are, and that's where the healing is. Look at those words about World War II. Are those words the awareness that's looking? And don't just answer it intellectually. Notice that literally, in direct experience, this is the awareness that's looking. Those are words appearing in it. Let those fall. Go through each of them. There's a carrot, or you said something about a carrot. Are those words the awareness that's looking? No. I have to heal. Are those words the awareness that's looking? No. Those words are for an ego that wants to continue to survive in time. That's what that is. The words themselves are not the awareness that's looking. When does this goddamn quest end? Those are words for an entity that doesn't exist. Are those words the awareness that's looking? No. Returning again to your true nature with each scene. I'm wrong because I don't have enough skill. Okay, but are those words the awareness that's looking at them? No. All right. I can't even try anymore. Because the question is, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to heal an ego in time? Because good luck with that. That ego doesn't want to be healed. Or are you interested in recognizing what you are and seeing that you're not these things? So these words like, I'm exhausted. I can't even try anymore. Are those words the awareness that's looking? Be radical with this. At this point in the game, that you need to be radical. Now I can see how the mind would say, oh, now he's saying I'm wrong because I'm not radical. Perfect. Use all these things that people say that reinforce it to go into inquiry. So if there's anything that I've said in here that reinforces that you're wrong, or this is endless, or more hell is coming, put those words up and ask, are those words the awareness? You can do it with images. Is that image? Is that the awareness that's looking? Do you get my point? I'd be surprised if you go through all of that with earnestness, with self honesty, that you could come back and tell the same story. But if you do, please, please email me. I want to know the results of it. Just interested. Email me at killibycenter@gmail.com and tell me how this goes. But I would really say work with somebody first. Go to killaby.com and let us guide you through that. But if you don't, at least do the inquiries that I suggested here today and then write me back. What a great question. Keep those kind coming. Really juicy.